12 days of near unprecedented tit-for-tat strikes between the Zionist entity and Iran. U.S. involvement, regional alarms as Qatar's Al-Udeid were targeted by Iranian missiles. And now a Trump-brokered ceasefire proclaimed, only to see rockets fired and warnings exchanged mere hours later. Explosions rocked Tehran. Sirens wailed across occupied Palestine. Gaza's suffering continued in parallel. European capitals crumbled emergency meetings. Gulf states juggled condemnation and mediation. And the IAEA warned of secret enrichment risks. From Qatar to Rome to Ankara, leaders urged restraint while quietly preparing contingencies. Tonight we dissect, is this tenuous truce a genuine turning point or merely an interlude before the next flashpoint? In tonight's special, we'll unpack all this with top experts from Los Angeles to Milan to Dubai. This is All 24 News Special. Hello there and welcome to All 24 News special coverage. And before we bring in our guests, let's follow the latest in this report by Zahra Farjani, and we come back.
Tensions remain high across the Middle East as Iran accuses the Zionist entity of violating a ceasefire brokered just a day earlier by US President Donald Trump. Iran's military says Israel launched 3 waves of attacks Tuesday morning on targets inside the country, despite an agreement to halt hostilities starting at 7 a.m. Among the dead, 9 civilians in the northern province of Gilan, and the prominent nuclear scientist Mohammad Reza Sadiqi, killed in an earlier morning airstrike. A separate Zionist attack hit Evin prison in Tehran during visiting hours. Iranian officials say at least 2 prison staff, inmates, and visiting family members were killed, though the exact number is still unknown. Part of the prison's administrative building was also destroyed. Iran's Ministry of Health has raised the official death toll from recent airstrikes to at least 606, warning that number is likely to grow. In response, Iran's Revolutionary Guard issued a direct warning to both the entity and the United States.
We warn America and the Zionist regime of the crushing blows of the brave Islamic fighters from the north to the south of the occupied territories and of the strike on the American base in Al-Udeid, which should serve as a lesson. Otherwise, in the next phase, they will face an even more powerful response with border targets already designated.
Meanwhile, Iran denies launching any attacks of its own after the ceasefire took effect and says it is committed to the agreement for now. But with both sides trading accusations and the Zionist forces acknowledging 28 soldiers killed over the past 12 days, the prospects for lasting calm remain uncertain.
A tumultuous picture, a ceasefire declared, then tested within hours. Now the question, where do we go from here? Let's meet our guest, Dr. Hamoud Salhi, Associate Dean and Professor of International Studies at California State University from Los Angeles, USA. Thank you, sir, for agreeing to be with us.
Thank you, Karim. Pleasure being with you.
Pleasure is all ours. And Dr. Giorgio Cella, foreign policy analyst and author based in Milan, expert on EU-Middle East relations and transatlantic shifts. Hello, sir, and welcome to our show.
Thank you, Karim. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure, as always. And Mr. Serkan Ural, a Turkish geopolitical analyst based in Dubai. Hello, sir. It's a pleasure to hear from you again.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting.
Our pleasure. So, ceasefire that is under scrutiny, that's the theme of our first discussion, Dr. Salhi. How credible do you assess Trump's announcement that the Zionist entity and Iran agreed to a ceasefire, given immediate reports of violations as we followed in the report? Israel Katz ordering intense strikes despite the truce. Are we witnessing genuine de-escalation or another diplomatic mirage? I mean, is this a premature victory lap or classic misdirection to control narrative, let's say?
I think this is it, at least for this round. I mean, we are going to expect another go at it in a couple of years, possibly. It's the same story we've seen with the Palestinian resistance, with Hezbollah. So this is another front. But for now, we are on a break. For how long, we don't know. Why I'm saying this is it? Really, the ending fits Trump triumphalism. Trump is going like that player, that soccer player, who lives at the top of his or her form. In other words, they achieved the ultimatum. And what a better way for Trump, from his perspective, to leave as a winner. In fact, just days ago or recently, he was nominated by Pakistan for a Nobel Prize. This is another chapter, another way for him to add to his record. But then there are some issues on the front that makes this is also, at least for now, this is it. Number one, on the Israeli side, the losses up to today, according to certain estimates, are over $1.5 billion. That is a huge number, a huge cost. And it comes at heavy destructions of building facilities, and many other things linking to that. And this is a very, very important. Connected to that is the psychological warfare that the Israelis, for a while, the shelters were, it's an affair for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it's an inconvenience. But in the last 2 days or so, or particularly the last day, that continued for 2 hours. And more than anything else, Iranians started to launch new technologies and new drones and new missiles. And those are very sophisticated. And it turns out that their effects were tremendous. The airspace was closed or has been closed for 11 days. So those are real terms. And the other thing, the narrative that we see in the West, the narrative that the major news outlets are clearly in favor or supporting the Israelis, that the nuclear the nuclear facilities were destroyed or damaged to a point where it will take years to be repaired or for Israel to come back. So it gives President Donald Trump another narrative, another reason for him to be that leader, that person who ended this war. And it's in less than 3 months, you could say less than a month perhaps, he's able to be a peacemaker from his perspective, stopping the war in between Pakistan and India, and now between the Israelis and the Iranian. And never mind that the United States has been involved in this. The United States is behind it. The United States is a culprit. If without the United States, Israel will not have lasted this long. So that's why, Karim, I think we are for a break, at least for a few, perhaps, years. And I could be wrong. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you indeed. What about you, Dr. Cella? I mean, from Brussels to Rome, EU leaders welcomed the ceasefire, but they warned that it was fragile. How consistent is the EU position in this crisis, according to you?
Well, usually EU foreign policy is not rock solid. We have seen this on many occasions when it comes to international crisis. There is not always a cohesion in the European Union's view. But this time around, in the face of such dangers for the war security and international relation balances, they have shown a certain amount of cohesion, unity in supporting this ceasefire, which is, of course, maybe shaky, or maybe it's not a definitive ceasefire. We will see this within the next days, but they have showed a kind of unitary vision in supporting this ceasefire that has been created by Washington alone. Brussels didn't have much of a voice or much of a saying when it comes to this very crisis. Brussels didn't manage to position itself as a unitarian power broker, nor diplomatically, even less militarily, because, as we all know, the EU is still far away from being a military power or having a military unity. So this crisis, everything is being handled, right or wrong, like it or not, but is being handled by the US, of course, dealing with Iran and Israel. And Trump even said at one moment in time that Europe had no voice in this. And so there's also been a kind of transatlantic tension in this, because the Trump protagonism and Trump unilateral view as basically, as happened during the Ukrainian crisis as well, Trump has sought to find a kind of a tuning or some sort of cooperation, or to co-opt the Russians more than the EU in dealing with such international crisis. And the same thing happened this time around with this Iran-Israel 12 days war, as he named it. And so for the EU has shown to be still far away from having a saying, a voice. And we also have to remember that in these very days, the EU is still struggling to reach a unanimous consensus on the defense spending 5% budget. So it's really not realistic to think about the EU in this crisis to be to have the power to dictate something concerning this extremely complex situation in the Middle East that we are witnessing these days.
Thank you indeed. What about you, Mr. Serkan Ural? Turkey publicly backed the US-Qatar ceasefire call, urging both sides to comply. But Ankara also has deep ties with Tehran and complex relations with the Zionist entity. In practice, can Turkey help enforce, or is it more likely caught between neutrality and hedging bets regionally? And how do Gulf states, since you're based in Dubai, how do Gulf states' mediation efforts, such as Qatar and Oman, play into this?
With the conflict, GCC countries, especially Qatar, get targets because of the US bases in Qatar. These missiles come from Iran to Qatar, around 19 missiles, and only one get at the target. But it was not an easy situation in the Gulf. Even people got really threatened about this conflict. But generally, especially Israel couldn't survive this expensive war because of confronting this air missiles is daily cost $1 million. So they ask from GCC countries to sponsor against Iran with them, but GCC countries, including UAE, they condemned the strikes, and so they didn't get the support from Gulf countries. On the other side, of course, Turkey and Iran has a border, and it is very long border. And for this occasion, last time, like Syria or Iraq, huge people flowed into Turkey. For this conflict now, there is nothing on this issue. The Iranian border is not a problematic, but the idea of the conflict and the war show us something different. First, Iran doesn't trust Israel, and Israel doesn't trust Iran, and both they don't trust Trump, United States of America. This is the issue. So under these conditions, we are talking about ceasefire, but how will be the continuous part? If you check the American President Bill Clinton, he said Netanyahu demands a long war with Iran to keep his position and seat more longer and longer forever. So there is a scale, two sides. They are all going up, they are all going down, something that they lose and they gain together. But this is from international community and organizations unacceptable. But there is the United Nations is not enough. Not solving the questions, conflicts. This is the 21st century, and we believe that United Nations lost already the power and the soul in Bosnia, in Gaza, and nothing can be done. So international community, the powerful countries could help to solve the issue or to help both sides. This day, it was important that having a NATO meeting in Holland, and just one member of NATO as a Muslim country is Turkey, and we expect to have a meeting with American side and Iranian side in Istanbul. So we can see, because US President Trump can make everything. We can expect anything from him. 12 days ago, he said, no, we cannot do this because there is a risk of Iran to become a Libya. Then later, he sent the B-2 bombers and then bombed Iran nuclear plants. So this is the issue. So, there are opportunities for peace, but international community, even big powers like China, Russia, and if United Europe can give support, there will be a long time process on the peace, prosperity for the region.
Mm-hmm. Thank you indeed. And I get back to you, Dr. Hamoud Salhi. Given everyone's eye on Trump's social media interventions, quote, bring your pilots home, is the ceasefire more performative theater than durable pact? You have partially answered that before, and you agreed that it's some kind of a narrative to make Donald Trump look good. But then, would you agree with Serkan Ural that certain big powers would hold the real leverage to keep both sides from dropping a load of bombs again, as Trump puts it?
I don't think any other players has any force or any deterrence against the Israelis. The only player, the real player, is the United States. Today, when Donald Trump said and made a statement that he could not sort of believe the word that he used on television and for the world to see, is extraordinary, the kind of frustration that President Donald Trump appears to be foreseeing that Israel is not doing what it's supposed to do. It's Trump, it's the United States that decide what's the next step. And for the next step is this. The United States and Israel both need Iran to continue to be the enemy. Otherwise, Karim, how are you going to justify the military weapons that are sort of sold, advanced technology that you've seen? We've seen, from my perspective, round one of a long, protracted conflict between the Israelis and the American. What we're going to see between the Israelis, American on the one side, and Iran, and all will deal with the kind of technology the Americans today make the case that the nuclear facilities or capabilities, it's very important to see what they're saying, capabilities have been destroyed, that it will take them, but they add it will take them a long time to come back and rebuild. The key there is that they are going to come back and rebuild. But at the same time, we have also an engaged Iran. What happened in this situation is that the Iranians broke the taboo that Israel is invincible, just as the Tufan of Al-Aqsa, the October 7, did break that invisibility that Israel cannot be defeated. So the Iranians will shift. It's a moment for them to sort of look at where they are. Certainly, their allies are not as strong as they were. And we start to think about the balance of power in the region. And in that balance of power, you have to question how, since the end of the Cold War, while the United States says has changed its enemies, is that the Russians and China. But most of the war, most of their military capital is spent in the Middle East. So that is one issue to consider. The other issue to consider is that how do you place this Middle East now in the context of other areas that the United States has to have some control? When you have three super carriers in the Gulf today, one of them, Nimitz, I believe, came from the Pacific. That sort of put America into a very difficult or threatening situation because of the conflicts or the competition, or however we define it with China. The point is that the Middle East, the United States, will have to revise, or we have to revise its strategic outlook in the entire world by deciding whether this is the place where I am going to continue, just as have been there in the past, or whether to actually start taking China and Russia from that sort of a global superpowers dominance. So the point I'm trying to make, Karim, is that because you have the United States in place, and the United States, that is the decision maker in this war, United States, the only way that it could sort of make this and forever peaceful region is to think of other priorities or be sort of truthful when it says that the competition to the United States today, or the enemy, is China and Russia. If that is the case, then you have to go somewhere else. But judging what we've seen now, what the Palestinian resistance did and what the Iranians did now, the Middle East will be a hot place. And the United States will start to be looking from now how best to defeat and to create a technology that will defeat those missiles, ballistic missiles that have reached Iran. And it will be part of the conversation or the negotiation, should that be, about nuclear Iran. We're no longer talking about nuclear Iran having their nuclear. We're talking about, or denying Iran, however you describe that, which is very, very interesting as a point. In the past, before these things, we were saying that Iran is really 90% close to getting that bomb or whatever it is, that nuclear. Now it's come down to 60. And now we're told, this is Rubio himself who said, it doesn't matter. I mean, from 60 to 95, you could jump, you could do it in whatever it is, in a few days or whatever. So the narrative really fits very well. And I think that, and I end with this, Karim, the director chair of the EIE, the Atomic International Agency, made it very clear, even though he doesn't dare to criticize the United States, but he made a very, very important point. He said the IE makes its assessment on evidence, and Iran does not have the capability to be a nuclear power, or it's not there. Well, other agencies makes on the intentions, and that's where. So the intention is to make Iran a country that threatens the United States, and that's why we are going to see another chapter of this war if the United States doesn't revise its policy and start to shift to other areas where its interests perhaps are seen as more vital.
Thank you indeed. And let me bring back Dr. George Chella. So, George Chella, in light of what Dr. Hamoud Sarhi was saying, how do you see the fragility of post-conflict diplomacy, according to what we heard from Dr. Hamoud Sarhi? Do you agree?
Well, I would also like to take the point from what we just heard, but also to examine what Tehran might do in a possible new phase of confrontation with Israel. Tehran's option in such a case are limited, but still, as the professor was highlighting before, Iran retains certain military options should the fragile ceasefire collapse. And Tehran basically has three main options. Again, the ballistic hypersonic missiles for sure has been proven to be kind of effective and maybe kind of a surprise in terms of strategic means that Iran that is at the disposal of Tehran. The second factor might be an attack on U.S. bases, but that's kind of unlikely because that would, it's unlikely that Tehran would try to escalate tension and confrontation directly with the U.S. And another point concerns the so-called Shia axis. We know that during this brutal war that has been going on for almost 2 years now after the 7 October attack, Israel has weakened this Shia axis, both in Lebanon, in Syria, and of course in Gaza with Hamas, even though Hamas, of course, is Sunni, is not Shia, but anyways, but these militias have been weakened, but they haven't been defeated. So they are still there, and even Hamas is still there, and they can still create a strategic problem if they would be in the position of helping and be coordinated by Tehran in a possible future violence, again, confrontation with Israel. Tehran has another very important instrument, which could be the Strait of Hormuz closure. It's there as well. It's kind of unlikely that Iran might be capable of closing completely the Strait of Hormuz, but it could cripple global energy markets by making the waters hardly navigable or barely navigable, and that could also be something pretty negative at the very same time for Tehran, because that might be seen as also as a self-destructive option, given Iran's own dependence on revenue from oil export through the corridor of Hormuz. We know that more than 20% of global oil transaction passes through these very, very strategic Strait of Hormuz. So all of these options are doable, but of course they really depend also on the situation of the situation on the ground and of possible U.S. policies in assisting Israel. But that's all up in the air so far as we're speaking. And one last point, Karim, if I might, conclude this interjection, as concerns strategic autonomy. I bring back the first point you asked me about the EU. Well, again, I go a bit back into history. We know that the EU has tried for decades to bring about a sort of a European defense community. You also remember back in the 50s where General de Gaulle had a different vision from the European defense community. So back then you already had tensions and a different perspective, and so far it didn't materialize. Right now the EU is actually moving little but more significant steps towards a military power projection, but it's still a long road ahead, and for sure it won't be ready to address a possible ceasefire collapse situation in the Middle East now. That is, of course, there's no doubt about that.
Thank you indeed. And before I bring in Mr. Serkan Ural with the debate questions, I would like to update you and dear viewers on the latest. So Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian on Tuesday announced the end of what he called the 12-day war imposed on his country by the Zionist entity. In a written message addressed to the nation and published by the official IRNA news agency, Pezeshkian emphasized that the Zionist entity and the United States cannot impose illegitimate aspirations on Tehran by force.
Today, after the heroic resistance of our great nation that writes history with its determination, we witnessed the establishment of a ceasefire and the end of this 12-day war. Imposed by adventurism and provocation, the Islamic Republic of Iran has been involved in a military conflict to defend itself, and I hope we will not be forced to fight again. The Zionist entity and America must understand that they cannot impose their illegal aspirations, which violate international laws, on Iran by force.
And in a related development, the Iranian army confirmed on Tuesday that the Zionist entity violated the ceasefire agreement and vowed to respond. According to Brigadier General Ibrahim Zolfaghari, spokesperson for Iran's Armed Forces Central Command, the Zionist occupier launched 3 waves of strikes on targets inside Iran by 9 a.m., despite the truce taking effect from 7 a.m. It warned that no attack would go unanswered and that the Zionist entity will pay a heavy price. And in another development, Iran denied violating the ceasefire, stating it had not launched any missile attacks on the Zionist targets in the occupied territories after the truce took effect. The Iranian Supreme National Security Council officially confirmed the ceasefire with both the Zionist entity and the United States came into force starting today. And US President Donald Trump, for his part, accused both the Zionist entity and Iran of violating the ceasefire he had announced just hours earlier, speaking to reporters before departing to attend the NATO summit in The Hague on Tuesday. Trump said he was not satisfied with either side, particularly criticizing the Zionist entity for having withdrawn immediately after agreeing to the deal.
I don't think so, but I'm not happy that Israel's going out now. There was one rocket that I guess was fired overboard. It was after the time limit, and it missed its target. And now Israel's going out. These guys got to calm down. Ridiculous. I didn't like plenty of things I saw yesterday. I didn't like the fact that Israel unloaded right after we made the deal. They didn't have to unload. And I didn't like the fact that the retaliation was very strong. But in all fairness, Israel unloaded a lot. And now I hear Israel just went out because they felt it was violated by one rocket that didn't land anywhere. That's not what we want, I'll tell you. And I'm telling you, I'm not happy about that, Israel, either.
So back to you, Mr. Serkan Ural. Iran denied responsibility for the 2 ballistic missiles intercepted by the Zionist entity hours into the ceasefire. So what do we understand from this? Could this be a rogue proxy, a strategic ambiguity, or, as we've seen in past conflicts, maybe a cover for internal misfire?
Both we can agree on. You're right, and this is the right question. We can see the balance policy. Both sides they say we won the war, and after 12 days, Trump got angry from both sides. First of all, let's talk on Trumpism, that is tariffs and economical embargoes. First time, the lobby, the Israeli lobby, really make him in a hard position to bombing Iran. They are now on for U.S. side, for Trumpism side. There will be sanctions on Iran, and now on, maybe he is the best ally of Israel, but there can be a different perspective after this ceasefire. For their issue, how it started, U.S. agreed on that Iran should decrease the enrichment of uranium from 97% to 3%. This means an industrial usage period. We don't have enough information about the latest 3 nuclear plants after bombing, and also we don't have healthy information about how will be this situation. But we can say that after the bombings, Iranian people support their leaders more than before bombing, and also Netanyahu keep his seat longer, maybe forever, after the bombings. So for this balance, we can see from outside, this is the balance game for 2 countries. Also, we must discuss about any economical earthquake in the global economic era, like Strait of Hormuz. This means nearly 20 million barrels of oil and 300 meters square of LNG, like Kuwait, Iran, Iraq, Qatar, and Emirates. These countries all export from this line, and also 20% Europe and 50% Asia countries, including China, also affected if any the closure of the strait. So this makes oil prices up, and also this Trump doesn't demand this issue. So there should be leadership in the world that is trustable to control these conflicts. But I can tell you, Yemen issue, Iraq issue, Syria issue, and Ukraine issue, Gaza issue, all connected with this latest 12 days war. Because if Ukraine and Russia were not in a war, then Russia will be more involved to Iran politics and also Iran and Israel conflict. You know, Putin has really a headache during the Ukraine war. So China, as a big power, can mediate between these conflicts, because we see China is every time positive way and short time period finding a solution to finish the wars and keep peace. For the EU countries, we have lots of question marks. See, the German president said some dirty things should be done by Israelis. Dirty things means this war. So Germany supports, but Italy and French leaders gave a reaction to this idea. So we cannot see a solid European Union there. Overall, we need stability and peace for the region more than ever.
Thank you indeed. And back to you, Dr. Hamoud Salhi. So when we look at the North African scene, we see the North African public, just like anywhere else, was watching nervously. And Algeria, historically skeptical of Western interventions and supportive of Palestinian cause. I mean, after this ceasefire, how might, for example, Maghreb states, including Algeria, position themselves? Could we see renewed, for example, pan-Arab solidarity pushes or fatigue with the endless cycles of conflict?
No, I think your question or your observation or recommendation perhaps to start revising or looking at the Maghreb of the people, meaning that we have to take into account the effect that the normalization with Israel is having on the region and more so on the Palestinians. Because Karim, one wonders, for example, when it is reported that 2 Moroccan officers were killed in an attack by Iranians in Haifa. Now, we know the same reports indicate that these forces joined or participated with the Israeli occupying forces in participate in joint forces with the Israelis. That is a serious thing. The second point is that nearly a year ago, in August 2024, the Israelis nominated as the head of the what you call liaison, the Office of Israeli Liaison in Rabat, a person who described the Palestinians as inhuman, and worse than that, opposed the demonstrations that were pro-Palestine. These are serious issues, and it doesn't justify any policy. I think with what we've seen with the genocide that we've seen in Gaza, it is high time to start looking at what is the purpose of all of this. I mean, are we now, as people of the Maghreb, or some of us, don't believe that the Palestinians have a statehood, or hide beyond, the idea that we are the protectors of Jerusalem, but yet we don't do anything? We're strong members of the Organization of International Conference, the Islamic Conference, and we sabotage any efforts to protect Jerusalem. These are serious issues. And I think the idea of creating some channels that will bring civil society and rally, perhaps the same thing that we did when you have this caravan of cars and buses starting from Algeria going to provide some assistance, food assistance to the Palestinians, is a good example. And it's sad to see that the region is being trapped under the interest of foreign powers, and this specifically Israel. When we see the tragedy, the genocide, the mass killing, the deportation, the Zionist plan unfolding before our eyes, and we continue to do what we're doing, collaborating with the Israeli officers against a state, another state that was attacked while its national sovereignty was violated. And worse than that, we tolerate or we accept someone to be on our land who is known for his opposition of the Palestinians, describing them as inhuman. That sort of begs the question, are we true? Where are we on this conflict? And it's very, very hard to accept the fact and not to see that at the end there will be some consequences. And perhaps luckily we have a country, our country, that has a strong military, it has expressed strong positions in support of the Palestinians. We have our Algerians who are sort of, I still remember, I mean, we all know about, the soccer game between the Palestinians and the Algerians, where the Algerians were rooting for the Palestinians. So Palestine is in the heart of every Algerian. I think that brings sort of some kind of relief and happiness that at least that could counter what others are doing to do harm to an innocent people and an innocent country that is standing for justice. And that everyone is seeing the world that these acts are genocide and should be stopped. It's shame that we are part of it, or some of us, or some of those are part of it. Yeah.
Thank you indeed. And Dr. Cella, from a different angle, I mean, we see how, let's say, destabilizing the situation can be, especially for Europe, seeing what it's going through within, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. So we've seen Italy's Eni, for example, BP and Total evacuating staff from Iraq earlier, global energy security already rattled. So if Iran's proxies, for example, Hezbollah, Houthis, feel emboldened, they might we see expanded maritime harassment or attacks on shipping beyond Hormuz, as you mentioned earlier. How should Europe prepare for possible disruptions in such scenarios, both security and supply-wise? And what can be done, by these powers, perhaps to appease and de-escalate the situation seriously?
Well, as I said before, I think that joint military action by all Iran proxies, even though they have been kind of crippled in their military might in this 2 years war with Israel, they can still inflict damage and bring about some kind of chaos and jeopardizing global navigations in the Strait, and create also military problems with Israel in case the ceasefire collapses. I would also like to add one thing, Karim, if possible, that I agree with what Mr. Oral said before about Russia's position. They could have done much more in order be an important diplomatic power broker in this case, but they are as well still stuck in the Ukrainian war. So while China has taken a more defiled position and a more diplomatic stance, Russia could have done more, but again, their major strategic problem right now is in Eastern Europe with the war in Ukraine that keeps on going. And again, I would like to I share the view of Mr. Oral before when he talked about the how all of these conflicts are intertwined. This is absolutely true. Also think about Iran's providing the drones to Moscow, which has been one of the main keys of the Russians in order to put pressure on the Ukrainian army during the last 2 years. The Shahed drones. So all of these wars as the late Pope Francis said, this is a global war through pieces, in different chapters, and so this is also important to consider and to remember. It's all intertwined. Going to the last part of your question concerning a possible action from the EU in a possible hypothetical scenario where the ceasefire collapse. Of course, we all hope this won't happen, but in that case, I think it's really hard to predict what Europe is gonna do. And again, I repeat myself, I don't think that the European Union as a whole, as a unitary geopolitical subject, might be doing something pretty relative. I think that there could be again maybe a unitary diplomatic position, but no united military action coming from the EU with an independent position distant from the US. I think they will lag behind what the Trump administration will do, because, as I said before, there is still no military union when it comes to the European continent, and there is still no foreign policy shared vision. So I think that maybe different countries would move along with the enforcing what the US will do, and maybe certain other countries will be won't be involved in the conflict at all, because we have seen pretty different positions so far. We also had countries like the UK and France that even hinted of a possible suspension of trade deal with Israel because of the drama going on in Gaza, of the humanitarian situation in Gaza, and then Netanyahu launched this attack on Iran, and that kind of created.
Let me take it from there, Mr. Cella, Giorgio, and include Serkan. So while the entire world is focusing on Tehran and Tel Aviv, the Zionist entity killed 870 Palestinians in Gaza during this same conflict. So isn't this selective attention, Mr. Oral Serkan, by government leaders, by governments and media, a dangerous double standard? Don't you see that?
Exactly. Western media sees everything from one perspective, and it is not depending on humanity, equality, democracy. This is a double face, especially for the Muslim countries. If it is about any Muslim country, there are a double face we can see. So this is coming from Bosnia and Gaza, and now what is going on? So there are some question marks about also the Islamic countries. You see Pakistan, for example, asking for an Islamic army, but also nominated Trump for an award. So for the region, for example, Iran's nuclear power is a threat for Egypt, for Saudi Arabia.
Mr. Serkan Orhan, I am sorry, but we have run out of time and I need to wrap up. Thank you so much. So tonight we've navigated ceasefire rhetoric, regional anxieties, humanitarian tragedies, great power maneuvers, and economic shockwaves. Our panel has offered a spectrum of insights, whether this pause heralds genuine de-escalation or simply resets the next round of fire and conflict. I thank you, Dr. Hamoud Salhi, Dr. Giorgio Cella, and Mr. Serkan for their expertise tonight, and you, dear viewers, for sticking to our channel. Until next time, take care.